I was standing by the kitchen sink, scraping the last bit of salad dressing into a Tupperware. The faucet was still running, dripping like the restless thoughts in my mind. Then, Mum said, as calmly as if she were reading the weather report, "We're out of oat milk again. Can you pick some up on your way home from work?" I didn't look up. I just pressed the lid down and asked quietly, "Is that for you or for Lauren and her hormones?" Mum didn't laugh. She never did when it came to Lauren. "It's for her tea," she said, folding the grocery list like it was a church bulletin. "She needs to relax before her flight." I froze. "Flight? What flight?" Mum blinked as if I'd asked something strange. "It's for a women's retreat. Iceland. The cold air helps reset cortisol levels." I stared at her, silent. Iceland. Spa. Holistic. Stress. The word she carefully chose. Not irresponsible. Not unemployed for 19 months. Not the reason I've been paying the mortgage, groceries, phone bills, utilities, and apparently now, oat milk for Icelandic hormone balance. I knew something was off, but I wasn't ready to say it yet. The next day, I was still shaken by the strange signs I had sensed the night before. Sitting in a meeting at work, my phone suddenly buzzed. I saw the name Andrea, the credit card company representative, flashing on the screen. I sighed and stepped outside. Andrea's voice was polite but serious. "We detected unusual activity on your card. Large transactions in Reykjavik, Iceland over the past 3 days. Luxury hotels, private tours, spas, several upscale restaurants, totaling over $24,000. A tight lump formed in my throat. I hadn't set foot in Iceland. The card user wasn't me. It was Lauren, my sister. I closed my eyes, trying not to let my emotions take over. "Please freeze the card immediately," I said firmly. That night, when I got home, I decided to confront Mom. "Mum, how is Lauren affording such an expensive trip?" She hesitated, avoided my gaze, then whispered, "She said she won it in some online raffle or sweepstakes." I snorted in disbelief. "Of course she did," Mum continued, her voice hurried, almost offensive. "Lauren's been really stressed lately, Cassie. This will help her relax." I knew the harsh truth beneath her words, but I wasn't ready to face it yet. Days passed and I started piecing things together. The spending was out of control. Lies were masked by a veneer of family harmony. I felt like a stranger in the home I'd helped build. Conversations in the kitchen grew colder. Eyes avoided mine. Forced laughter filled the rooms, making the atmosphere heavier each day. Every time I asked about the money, the answers were just tangled excuses. One evening, I decided I had to face Lauren directly. We met in the dimly lit kitchen. My voice trembled as I tried to stay calm. "Lauren, why did you use my card without asking? Do you even know how hard Mum and I have been working?" She gave me a cold, dismissive smile, eyes hard as ice. "This is family business. I'm just doing what it takes to keep things together." I took a deep breath, holding back tears. Family means trust and respect. What you did was betrayal. She shook her head defiantly. "I do everything for the family, and you're just full of blame and jealousy." I felt the invisible wall grow thicker between us, and loneliness deeper than ever before. The curtain of truth was slowly pulling back. I found emails, receipts, and invoices for extravagant purchases my family had never shared with me. Worse, there were bank loans taken out in my name, loans I never knew existed. I remembered the countless sleepless nights, questioning if there was still a place for me in this family. I wondered if love even existed here, when lies and selfishness were woven into every shared moment. The moment I hung up the phone with Lauren, a strange numbness swept over me. My hands trembled, but not from fear, from the unbearable weight of betrayal. The person I trusted most, my sister, was manipulating everything right under my nose. And the worst part, Mum had known, or at least she had chosen not to stop it. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed every conversation, every laugh, every family moment that suddenly seemed like a carefully orchestrated farce. I kept thinking, how could they do this? How long had this been going on? The next day, I finally decided to confront Mom. I found her in the kitchen, her shoulders hunched as she chopped vegetables with distracted motions. "Mum," I said softly at first, then louder when she didn't respond. "I need to know everything." She looked up, her eyes weary but guarded. "Cassie, I didn't want to hurt you." I stepped closer, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and hurt. "Hurt me? You've been hiding debts, forged my signature, and let Lauren charge tens of thousands on my card. And all this time, you said nothing." She sighed deeply, folding her hands as if trying to find the right words. "Lauren's been struggling, Cassie. She felt trapped, desperate. We thought this retreat, this trip, might help her find peace." I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound that echoed off the kitchen walls. Peace? By draining my savings? By lying to me? That's not peace. That's destruction. She looked away, her voice dropping. "I know it's wrong, but I was scared that if I stopped her, she'd fall apart." I felt tears sting my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Fear doesn't justify theft. It doesn't justify the lies. The silence between us was suffocating. I wanted to scream, to break something, but all I could do was stand there, trembling with a mix of rage and heartbreak. Later, I sat alone in my room, scrolling through emails and documents I'd collected. There, in black and white, was the undeniable proof. Forged signatures, secret loans, credit card statements listing extravagant purchases, all under my name. A folder titled Receipts and Expenses held invoices for designer handbags, expensive dinners, spa treatments, none of which I was allowed to see or partake in. Each line, each number felt like another stab. But what broke me wasn't just the money, it was the betrayal. The fact that my own family, the people who were supposed to protect me, had used my trust as currency. That night, I called Lauren. My voice barely audible, I said, "Why, Lauren? Why betray me like this?" She was cold on the other end. "This is how family survives, Cassie. You either take or you get taken from." Her words crushed me. "I thought family meant love, not war." She laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Love? You're naive. This family is a battlefield." I felt tears finally spill over, not just for the money, but for the sister I lost. I whispered, "I'm done being your victim." Hanging up, I realized this was no longer just about money. It was a fight for my identity, my peace, my dignity, and it was far from over. The day I decided I couldn't stay silent any longer was the day everything changed forever. I was no longer the girl hiding in the shadows. I had to stand up, not just for the money lost, but for my dignity, my truth, and for myself. I started by freezing all joint accounts, a firm move like cutting an invisible cord, binding me to those who had taken advantage of me. I hired a lawyer who promised to expose everything. Every step was calculated, every move deliberate. It felt like stepping into a battlefield. Soon after, the calls began. Emily's voice was sharp, full of accusation and venom. "You've betrayed the family, Cassie," she spat over the phone. "How dare you?" I swallowed the anger, my voice steady but cold. "I'm not betraying anyone. I'm demanding honesty, respect, and transparency." Her laughter was cruel, like a knife twisting in my chest. "You're tearing us apart. You're selfish. You want to destroy everything. I took a deep breath, exhaling slowly. I want a family that's real, not a facade built on lies. Then my mother called. Her voice trembled, part pleading, part warning. Please, Cassie, think about peace. Think about family. Don't let this spiral out of control. We need to come together. I wanted to scream at her, to ask, where were you when they were stealing from me? When they used my name? But I stayed calm. Peace built on secrets isn't peace. It's silence, and silence hides the truth. My phone buzzed again. Olivia. This is your fault, she hissed through the message. If you hadn't started digging, none of this would have come out. You're breaking us. I closed my eyes, heart pounding. Maybe it's time we break, so we can finally heal. For a moment, the ice in her voice cracked. But then she fired back. You think you're so strong? You think you can stand alone? You're nothing without us. I didn't flinch. I'm stronger than I've ever been, because I'm standing for what's right, even if it means standing alone. The weight of their words, the memories of years swallowed in silence, crashed over me. But deep inside, I felt lighter, as if finally I had released a chain that had bound me for too long. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was a war for my truth, a fight for my voice. And I was ready to fight, no matter the cost. After the storm of confrontation, I expected silence, maybe even loneliness. I thought that by standing up to my own family, I was severing the last thread of connection. But what happened next surprised me. Support came from places I never expected. That night, after the hardest day of my life, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an old friend, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Hey, Cassie, I heard what you're going through. I'm here if you need to talk. The words felt like a lifeline thrown into a raging sea. I replied hesitantly, not sure if I deserved kindness. Over the next few days, more messages came in. Friends I thought I'd lost touch with sent words of encouragement. Some shared their own stories of betrayal, of families that fractured, but love that survived. One friend called late one night, her voice soft but firm. You're not alone. You don't have to carry this by yourself. Let me help. For the first time in months, I felt a crack of hope. Legal experts became my anchors, guiding me through the confusing, cold world of fraud and family betrayal. They translated numbers and documents into a language I could understand. They reminded me that I was fighting not just for money, but for justice and self-respect. Even distant relatives, once strangers or mere names, reached out quietly. They shared their scars, their regrets, their warnings. During one visit, an aunt pulled me aside and said quietly, "Blood doesn't always mean loyalty, Cassie. Sometimes, the family that hurts you the most is the one you're born into." Her words cut deep, but they also freed me. The nights were still hard. Sometimes the silence screamed louder than any shouting. Sometimes I wondered if I had made a mistake, if standing up meant losing everything. But then a message would arrive, a voice would call, a hand would reach out. And I remembered, family isn't just who shares your blood, it's who chooses to stand by you when it matters most. I learned that walking away from toxic ties isn't betrayal, it's survival. And sometimes letting go means holding on to yourself first. The weight of years spent biting my tongue lifted from my shoulders. I was no longer a prisoner of their expectations or their lies. I was free, and in that freedom I found a fierce strength, not born from blood, but from truth, from chosen love. The days after selling the house were quieter than I expected, but inside my mind was a whirlwind. I remember standing outside that old family home one last time. The "for sale" sign glared like a warning, or maybe a final goodbye. The paint was fresh, the flowers neatly planted, but for me, it felt like the closing of a chapter I never wanted to finish. I ran my hand along the cold metal gate, memories flooding in, birthdays celebrated in the living room, whispered arguments behind closed doors, laughter that once felt warm but now seemed distant and hollow. I asked myself, was this really the end? Or just the beginning of something I didn't understand yet? At home, the silence was different. No more late-night calls demanding money or excuses. No more walking on eggshells. The silence was mine to hold, both comforting and strange. Mum stopped calling as often. When she did, her voice was softer, sometimes tinged with regret, though the words never quite said it. One afternoon, she left a voicemail. "Cassie, I know things haven't been easy. I'm sorry for the pain. I hope one day we can find our way back." I listened again and again, my throat tight. Forgiveness felt so far away, not just for her, but for the years of silent suffering. Dad's voice was quieter too, less certain. Once he asked if I'd reconsidered, if we could just pretend things were normal again. I didn't reply. Instead, I focused on building something new. I found a small apartment on the other side of town. Modest, quiet, a place where I could breathe without feeling watched. I filled it with things I loved: books, plants, photos of friends who had become family. I bought fresh flowers for my kitchen table, not because it was a special day, but because I wanted to. Work became my refuge. Hours filled with tasks, challenges, and small victories. I stopped obsessing over every bank statement or phone call. I learned to relax again. But some nights, loneliness crept in like a shadow. I'd stare at the ceiling, wondering if I'd made the right choice, wondering if family was supposed to hurt this much. One evening, Grandma called. Her voice was warm but firm. "They're trying. Your mother is working harder, your father is fixing things around the cafe, and Lauren, she's trying too." I said nothing. That night, as I lay awake, I realized healing wasn't about forgetting. It was about accepting that people change, sometimes slowly, sometimes too late. Weeks later, I stopped by Grandma's cafe. I didn't go inside, just watched through the window. Lauren was wiping counters, Dad folding menus, Mum washing dishes. None looked up. I felt no anger, no pity, just clarity. They were finally being asked to hold their own. I turned away, walked back to my car, and felt, for the first time in years, peace. A few days later, I found a letter slipped under my door, written in careful, familiar handwriting. "You were right. I didn't want to admit it, but you were. Keep living your truth." No apology, no explanations, just those words. That was enough. I folded the letter and placed it beside oil photos, birthday cards, and receipts, remnants of a life I was finally ready to leave behind. I didn't cry, I didn't smile. I simply closed the lid, and I moved on. Moving forward wasn't easy. It was a slow, messy process, one that didn't come with clear instructions or quick fixes. Every day felt like walking a tightrope between past pain and future hope. Some mornings I woke up feeling lighter, freer, like I'd finally reclaimed a part of myself that had been buried under years of resentment and silence. I'd make coffee, open my window to let the sunlight in, and breathe without the weight of family drama pressing down. But other days, the loneliness returned. It crept in quietly at first. A soft ache in my chest, the hollow echo of unanswered questions. I'd catch myself reaching for my phone, half expecting a call that wouldn't come, or wishing for a text that would never be sent. In those moments, I learned to be gentle with myself. I reminded myself that healing is not linear, that peace is not something you find, it's something you build, brick by brick, day by day. I started to set boundaries that felt sacred, saying no without guilt, protecting my energy fiercely, choosing relationships that nurtured rather than drained me. It was hard at first, especially when those boundaries meant closing doors on people I once loved. But with every boundary set, I felt a little stronger, a little more certain that I deserved respect and kindness. One afternoon, I found myself reflecting on what family really meant. Was it blood ties, shared history, or something deeper? Love, trust, presence. I realized family is not always the people who share your name or your past. Sometimes, family is those who stand by you in the storm, who hold your hand when the world feels too heavy. I was lucky to find that family among friends, mentors, and even strangers who offered kindness when I needed it most. Sharing my story became part of my healing. I started writing, small posts, reflections, even videos, not for sympathy, but to give voice to those feeling trapped in their own silent battles. The messages I received were humbling. People reaching out, thanking me for courage, sharing their own stories of pain and resilience. It reminded me that none of us are truly alone. Sometimes, I wonder how different my life might have been if I'd spoken up sooner. But regret serves no purpose now. Instead, I focus on the lessons learned, strength, self-love, and the courage to walk away from what no longer serves. Choosing peace doesn't mean forgetting the past. It means forgiving myself for what I didn't know, for what I couldn't control, and embracing the future with open arms. Today, I live with intention. I cherish moments of quiet joy, morning coffees, laughter with friends, the freedom to be myself without apology. I am not defined by the betrayals or the broken promises. I am defined by the love I choose to give and receive, starting with myself. If you're listening and you feel lost or broken, know this: you are not alone. Your pain is real, but so is your power. You deserve peace, love, and respect from others, and most importantly, from yourself. It's okay to say no. It's okay to walk away. It's okay to protect your heart. Your story matters. Your voice matters. And healing is possible. Let's choose peace together.